Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to December.
Welcome to December.
Is it still 2020?
It's been for the past couple of years.
At least two. At least two.
Yes.
Vice President Pettis, it looks like we have a quorum. Okay, Vice President Pettis, it looks like we have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. All right. My fellow directors, President Alvarado, he will not be with us this evening. He advised us a little while ago. So it's just us. Miss Brenda, we can start the meeting.
Okay, first item is roll call. So I will start with formal roll call. Vice President Pettis.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Director Weiner.
Present.
Director Stanley.
Yes.
And Director Cepeda.
Here.
Thank you. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance or observation of the moment of silence.
Directors, your choice. I will be on silent. Thank you, madam.
Next item is item 2, approval of the agenda.
My fellow directors.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
I second.
We have a proper motion and a second. Ms. Brenda.
Thank you. Vice President Pettis.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Director Weiner.
Yes.
Director Stanley.
Yes.
And Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item is public comment. Items on the agenda. Madam Vice President, we do have one public comment that I will read out to the board here. It's quite lengthy. Would you prefer that I read it out for record or just record it under the minutes, under public record?
Do you have a summary of it?
I do not have a summary of it.
Is it possible to summarize it, or otherwise we have to read out?
I don't think we'd be able to summarize it, but it is about two and a half pages long. So it's sort of up to.
I'd like to ask that the board have it read into the record, please.
Okay,
Under
yes.
our public comment section, it does indicate that we would read these aloud up to 3 minutes. So,
Well, yes, so we'll have to time it for the 3 minutes, because if it's 2.5 pages, we don't want to spend that much time. So, do you want to set the timer?
Okay. Good evening, Board, President Alvarado, and members of the West County Wastewater District Board of Directors. On behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors Northern California Chapter and its nearly 500 essential construction and construction-related firms representing 21,000 merit shop construction workers and over 800 apprentices who perform public work jobs, we respectfully request to consider the following terms in your project labor stabilization agreement in order to include a diverse workforce. For over 40 years, ABC NorCal has been committed to training a skilled workforce in the construction trades. We train over 1,000 state and federally approved apprentices, journey workers, and craft trainees each year, a vital component to sustainability of the industry. Our apprentices, journey workers, and craft trainees come from all walks of life, and emerge from our training programs with a good paying career and the skills needed for employment security and their future success. We are disappointed with the direction taken by West County Wastewater District on August 5th, 2020 to consider a project labor stabilization agreement containing numerous provisions disadvantageous to the local contracting community who have been performing work for your district for decades. There is no question that your water district is facing record revenue shortfalls and unprecedented budget cuts responding to the coronavirus outbreak in your community, as you are doing what is necessary to ensure the health and safety of your residents. Now is not the time to be limiting opportunities for this community's builder. Every survey that has ever been conducted about PLAs show they decrease competition, increase costs, and are a disincentive to bid. Studies and real-life examples show that construction projects that don't have an open competitive bidding process can indeed be costly. Example, Pinole Hercules wastewater treatment plant expansion project with the PLA. Issues with this project include, despite having 10 bidders, pre-qualifying for the project and 8 bidders present for the mandatory job walk, there were only 2 bids that were received. The bids were $43 million and $49 million, which were 8% and 23% above the engineer's estimate of $39 million. The final completion date was delayed by 9 months. There have been various claims and disputes associated with the project. We respectfully request that you adopt the following amendments to ensure a fair project labor stabilization agreement. Raise the threshold to $10 million so that our state and federally approved apprentices have ample training opportunities to fulfill the required on-the-job training hours in order to graduate from our apprenticeship program and become journeymen. Remove the word joint to allow for all state and federally approved apprentices to be used. This will allow the men, women, and veteran apprentices who have chosen to enter state-approved merit shop apprenticeship training programs in pursuit of a construction career from the opportunity to work and gain the invaluable on-the-job training experience that provides stability for them, their families, and their communities. There are a couple other bullet points, but we have passed the 3 minutes. And Madam Vice President, that is the end of our public comment.
Madam Vice President, may I just mention, if I may, that it appears that the public comment is actually related to item 6A that's on our agenda for tonight, and I just wanted to point that out for the purpose of context.
Thank you so much. In that vein, then we won't discuss it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next item is agenda item 4, consent calendar. A, adopt the 2021 investment policy, and B, accept the completion of the pipe bursting and spot repair of sanitary sewers projects, authorize the general manager to file a notice of completion, and authorize the payment of retention totaling $38,799 to WR Ford Associates, Inc., 35 days after the date of reporting of the notice of completion for project number 18CS202.
Madam Vice President, may I also make a statement on this item?
Absolutely.
The investment policy is required to be adopted under law every year by the Board of Directors. This year, the investment policy was updated to reflect changes in the law and some changes in the titles of staff members. In addition, the version that is within the policy references the planning committee, but in an attempt to provide flexibility in the future, should the planning committee's name change, the staff has recommended one more change to this prior to adoption by the board, which would be to change planning committee to merely the committee that is charged with review of the investments. And if the board would consider that as a friendly amendment to the consent calendar, then a motion could be made to approve the consent calendar with that change. Alternatively, if there was requested discussion, we could pull this into action.
I move we accept the consent calendar as amended by Ms. Collins.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Director Wiener, and thank you, Director Zepeda. We have a proper motion and it's been properly seconded. Ms. Brenda?
Thank you. Vice President Sutter,
Yes, ma'am.
Director Weiner,
Yes.
Director Stanley,
I don't know how to unmute.
You're on
Director
mute.
Stanley,
Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
hello?
yes, we
Okay,
can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Director Cepeda,
Yes.
thank you. Consent calendar is approved as amended. Next item is the action calendar, and that's for 5A, authorize the general manager to execute an agreement with Sinagro WWWT Inc. for a total not to exceed $2,640,000 for sludge dewatering services.
Okay, and is there a presentation that goes with this, Ms. Lisa?
Yeah, so Andrew Clow, our Deputy General Manager, will be doing a very short intro to this item, and then Aaron Weiner, who is our Water Quality and Resource Recovery Department Manager, will be providing a little more detail on this item.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, board members. My introduction will indeed be very brief. Aaron will run through the dewatering process. You guys have heard this quite a few times, but he'll explain where we ended. It's pretty good. I just wanted to make clear we also have on the agenda tonight an update on our discussions around entering into a project labor agreement. And this contract is a $2.4 million contract, but I wanted to make sure we were clear that it's an operations contract for services, and the PLA would not apply to this type of a contract, to this type of service. Go ahead, Aaron. That's all. Just bringing that out first.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Vice President Sideth, directors, council, and staff. Aaron Weiner, Water Quality, Resource Recovery Department. So, as Andrew mentioned, we've been before you actually four. I think this will be the fifth time in the last year for items related to the digesters. First, it was late last year to evaluate the digesters. After the first of the year, to clean the digesters. Then a little later on in May, June, to bring on temporary dewatering, which turned out to be Sinagro. And then following that, we were back before you, I believe, in September, after we had got the full engineering report and determined that it was not safe to bring the digesters back online. And at that point, we would be continuing our dewatering operation, going out to an RFP. So that's where we're at right now. Sinagro was brought on in June, actually at the end of June, for a 6-month term that you approved. So in October, we went out to RFP to get proposals for continued dewatering. And the staff report in front of you is fairly detailed and comprehensive. I guess what I wanted to mention first off is that this pool of money is for the upcoming calendar year, so it would get us through the end of 2021. So in summary, the request that we sent out in October brought preliminary interest from 5 companies who queried us about the project. However, at the end of the RFP term, only one company submitted a bid, and that, as you can see, was Sinagro. So the proposal that they provided us, it provides for a price drop from $250,000 a month, roughly right now, to about $200,000 per month for their dewatering services. Sinagro's proposal involves a lime stabilization process followed by dewatering, which will produce Class B biosolids. And that's important, and I'll tell you a little bit about why in just a few minutes. The current dewatering process, which basically takes the solids from our process undigested and runs them through a belt press, does not create Class B biosolids. So it's important to note that this lime stabilization process will only be run during the growing season from April, essentially April, late April through October. And the reason this is important is that the materials that Synagro processes will be either land applied or composted at one of their facilities in the Central Valley. The composting facility actually has the advantage of producing Class A biosolids when the composting is complete. So the two key things here, well, let me just back up a little bit. So during the wet season, which is October through mid-April, the sludge will need to be, it'll continue to be dewatered as it is currently and disposed in the landfill. So the two real benefits to Synagro, and obviously it is an expense, not being able to, a substantial expense, not to be able to digest the sludge. But the two real benefits that it provides is that about 50% or just under 2,000 dry tons of material a year will now be able to be beneficially reused through land application and or composting. And then the other piece is that we've talked about this a little bit over the last several meetings, that the state Senate Bill 1383 requires jurisdictions to divert organic materials for landfill. So essentially this change in operation and management of the biosolids for us will allow us to reduce 50% of the organics we're sending to landfill in the coming year. So I think those are real important things. And really that's all I wanted to talk about to you in terms of this situation we're in and the proposal by Synagro. But I think it's really those two last key points, the diversion of organics and the beneficial reuse, are really important things to understand about this new agreement with Synagro. And they could not have really done this without a year or more agreement with us to manage our biosolids. So that concludes what I wanted to talk about this evening and then I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, board directors, do you have any questions? Liz, Director Zepeda?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Stanley?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And Director Weiner?
Harry, you're on mute.
Aaron, hi, nice to see you. Does this affect our 5-year capital improvements and upgrades plan? Are there projects that will be deferred from the list that's currently planned for the next 5 years?
It does not.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a more procedural question. So when you only get one bid in, do you guys automatically do a cost analysis to make sure that the price is fair and reasonable?
Can I start, Aaron? I think
Sure.
First, it was an RFP, a request for proposals. So the bid is part of it, but is not the primary selection process in this, because it's also the service aspect, and as Aaron discussed, all the other aspects that would come into this, the lime stabilization, et cetera. So it's a negotiated agreement at that point. It wouldn't have been selected solely on price, but it is significantly less than what we're getting from the same company for services right now per month. But that is because it's a longer term agreement. And I'll let Aaron speak to this as far as what the price is and what it looks like competitively if we seem like we're in the right range.
So without having, without getting other proposals, really the only thing that I have to go on is that it's essentially a 20% less cost that we're currently paying them. So really that's all I have to go by. And as I mentioned, the other things that we need to look at is the 50% diversion of organics from landfill and the 50% beneficial reuse that we will get out of their proposal. Part of the difficulties are that there are not a lot of players in the market that do this kind of biosolids handling, and I am not aware of any that are larger than Synagro. So they have the benefit of providing these land application sites and the composting sites that they own in the Central Valley, that other folks just don't have, other companies just don't have. So that ties into what Andrew was saying about, kind of being a specialized service. There just are not a lot of, comps out there, to look at.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brenda, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, there's no public comment on it.
Okay. And this is an action item, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on this item.
Second.
The item's been moved and properly second. Ms. Brenda?
Thank you, Vice President Pettis.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Director Weiner.
Yes.
Director Stanley. Director Stanley.
Here she is. Thank you.
And Director Cepeda.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item is agenda item 6, information report. Receive an update on the negotiation of the project labor stabilization agreement. And Madam Vice President, the only public comment that we received was read out earlier.
And who will we receive this update? Who will be delivering this update?
So Andrew is going to provide a brief update. We did present this item to the Planning Committee a few days ago. So we're going to provide a bit of a similar update with some additional information. And I did just want to take a moment to introduce Jerry K. Phillips, who is also on the call. And Jerry is an attorney with Hanson Bridget, working with Claire, and she has been working with staff as well, very experienced with working through these agreements. So I just wanted to introduce her. You see a new face on the call. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Welcome, Ms. Jerry.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, members of the board. I will give a brief overview. As the general manager mentioned, we were just at the planning committee on Monday, but we're currently in active negotiations with the Contra Costa County Building and Construction Trades Council to finalize a project labor agreement or a labor stabilization agreement. We'll come to it exactly where I can end up calling this thing sometime soon, I hope. The purpose of the agreement is to promote the efficiency of construction projects with the use of skilled labor, avoid labor disputes that could delay completion of construction projects, and to provide for a peaceful settlement of labor disputes and grievances. It also has some other provisions in it that they don't require, but they do encourage, and the actual language is that the unions will do their utmost to meet the objective of no less than 25% of all hours worked on a construction project will be performed by Contra Costa residents. And that's for any construction project that's valued at over $1 million. So like I said, we were in negotiations. We had some more discussions with the planning committee on Monday evening, and we've since taken some of those comments and worked those into our response to the Trades Council, which is back to them now, and we'll be waiting for a response to them, but expect to be talking to them soon. We've gone through an awful lot of items and really distilled it down to a handful that we need to continue a discussion on. and that is the well, there's a number of others that are some detailed items that we'll work out, but we're sure we'll work out with the Trades Council. But some issues that perhaps the board be interested in, the title of the agreement, and I'll defer a little bit later, either Jerry or Claire can talk a little bit about that, the project labor agreement or stabilization agreement, and why we think it matters. The threshold amount is $1 million. We don't see any reason that we're going to try to have that changed or want to change that, but we are working with them on defining that. We really need to get good clarity on how do we get to $1 million? What's it based on? What about projects that are part of a program? You know, how are they combined? We want to make sure that we're not, you know, disaggregating or breaking up a project that would somehow violate the terms of the agreement. So we want to get a very clear definition and one we can work with. I'm sure we will. The other areas are covered work and excluded work. And specifically, we really wanted to have some clarity on some of this because, as you know, we're also negotiating a very large construction contract with ENGIE as part of a energy services contract. And within that contract, there's also a large component, an operations and maintenance component for 20 years after the actual construction is completed. And that has to do with the requirements that they need to perform, guarantee certain energy savings, et cetera, through the project. So there's an incentive for them to do some of the operations and maintenance, make sure the equipment is performing the way that it needed to, as well as monitoring, verification, et cetera. And what we're having to pay attention to, there's this, and there's a number of other things within that energy services contract with ENGIE that we're paying close attention to that we want to make sure we understand how the project labor agreement would impact that. The company ENGIE already knows that it will apply. They've known that for since the summertime at least. So they will be applying the provisions, but those operations and maintenance portion, for example, should not be, and the Trades Council agrees, would not be part of a construction project. It's not part of building, and it wouldn't be part of the labor agreement. And so we're just having to work through some things there to make sure that we can be clear that we have this ongoing labor agreement that applies to all of our construction projects that exceed $1 million. But this one very large $50+ million construction project has been let in a different way, not through the traditional contracting process, and it is all considered one construction contract, but we need to make sure that there are some things in, like I mentioned, operations and maintenance. And won't go into any more detail on that, but I do believe that's something we're going to be able to work out with the Trades Council. And the last item is the duration of the agreement, and we can talk a little bit about that right now. Essentially, they're proposing an evergreen agreement, and that is not consistent with the policy that this board had brought forward, that they wanted us to have no more than 3-year agreements. But also, we don't really think that we want to go into that right away. We'd like a chance to evaluate the agreement rather than being in a position that it automatically renews unless the board takes an affirmative action to cancel it. We'd rather have it maybe be the other way around on that. But that we're working with the Trades Council on. We'll see what we can come up with. And then with that, I think I will stop my discussion. I know that the planning committee members probably have some things that they want to add. A couple things I left out that we did discuss at the planning committee, and I can either bring those up now or respond to questions, Vice President Sudduth, however you'd like me to do that.
Thank you so much. Board directors? I'm going to start different since both Director Cepeda and I were privy to this discussion at the planning committee. So I want to start with Director Stanley and Director Weiner to see if you have questions first before we Director Cepeda and I speak. So Director Weiner, do you have any questions first?
No, I'm glad to see that we're proceeding, and hopefully we can get this done sooner than later. Sounds good that we're working on it and that we're in negotiation. So that's my comment, and I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Director Stanley?
Vice President Sutter, the whole board agreed that we would enter into a contract with the PLA for PLAs, right? Is my recollection correct? Do you recall? Hello? Andrew,
Yes.
do you know?
Director Stanley, yes, that's correct. The board authorized staff to enter into discussions to negotiate an agreement. That's correct.
Yeah, General Manager, if I could just add, I think why I hesitate, I was trying to make sure I worded it correctly. We were not directed to enter into an agreement. We were directed to go negotiate agreement and bring it back for consideration and approval of the board.
Okay, so this is over terms and the evergreen policy. That's what's being hammered out, is just making sure that it conforms with what we already have in place as far as policies go.
There were quite a number of things that we marked up and wanted clarity on around definitions, making sure that we controlled liability. And then these were some of the remaining issues. And we had taken these issues to the planning committee to ask if they wanted to provide any input to us on these particular issues. A lot of the other ones, I would refer to them as ministerial or legal. They're about clauses in the arbitration process, the grievance process, things like that. That we're quite confident that we'll work out with the Trades Council. So these are the ones that we brought forward that could potentially be more of a policy issue, you know, the threshold, what work is covered, and the fact that we really want to try to do a side agreement or something that clarifies these operations and maintenance portions of the large NG contract. We feel pretty good about that. So then it really came down to the main ones would be what are we calling it? What's the duration of the agreement? And one thing that came up at the planning committee was around the local hires and what kind of they're going to do their utmost to meet that objective. We understand that, but what about underrepresented groups? Are they willing to commit to that as well? And a few things like that. So that's what we wanted to get a little more direction on.
Okay, so when if we're in a situation similar to what we've got going on with NG, for example, where we're undertaking a large project for a specific purpose, such as our climate issues, are we still able to have another NG-like relationship with somebody, or is this PLA gonna not allow that?
No, this does not preclude us from going through a design build process, which is similar to the NG the ESCO environmental services contract. That whole process is unique. It's a little bit different, but basically it's a design build process. And no, the PLA will not preclude us from going through, selecting the contractor through any of the appropriate legal means that we have available to us through the state contracting laws. But what it does say is that when you do enter into that contract, the PLA is part of that contract for all construction projects that exceed $1 million.
Okay, and I'm repeating what you said to make sure that I'm clear on this. You feel confident that whatever still needs to be worked out with the building and trades people, that there's going to be an acceptable agreement between all parties. Is that, am I hearing that?
I am confident that we will be able to come to agreement at a staff level on hopefully all elements of the agreement, but there may be a few that we are not. And that when we come back on the 16th, it might be that, we really think the agreement should be 3 years, and the Trades Council insists it has to be 5 years in an evergreen form. And we would bring that to the board and ask for you guys to make a decision on that, a policy decision. At that point, we wouldn't feel that that's really a staff decision. That becomes a board policy issue. And then there may be another question or two around the local hiring and those clauses if we don't come to agreement. But our intent is to try to come to agreement on as much as possible. And we think that we're going to be very close, if not all the way there. And at any rate, we will be back on the 16th. And we'll say, we got awfully close, but here's a couple of things that we need some input and some direction from the board on. And hopefully we have those at a very minimum.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Andrew.
Director Zepeda. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Stanley, was that all of your questions?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Director Zepeda.
Andrew, thank you again for continuing to work on this, and everybody else that's part of the team that's continuing to work on this. Very exciting. I look forward to being able to sign off on one side or the other on the 16th. Right? We might have to have PLA or whatever TBD name will be, A and B, and then for the board to be able to decide on one or the other, and one of them might be what they present, and then one is what the agency presents. So look forward to that. In regards to the duration of the agreement, I know we've gone back and forth a little bit. I think it's all in good faith. So if we're able to figure out a way, because the agreement, the policy that we created, how I understood it, it's when we go into one-on-one agreements, contracts with a specific entity, like NG or legal services, right? So we wanted to make sure that those were not forever long. How I see the PLA is sort of a sub-policy in a way, because they're helping us, right? They're not the contractors. We still have to go out and bid them every project we're doing. So those projects that we're bidding should not be evergreen. But this PLA/policy, in my mind, right, is more of a policy-ish. That one, I don't know if we need to limit it to 3 or 5 years, or maybe 5 years would be the one. But we gave notes during our meeting on Monday, and I think, Andrew, you're already working on some of those, try to figure out, what would be the best for both sides, so that we can come to a good agreement. But I was just thinking about that, on how I saw the PLA being a little bit different than the general policy that we created for purchasing. So that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Zepeda. And again, I know we were short on time on Monday, but going back to a couple of issues that I know we were speaking of, and just to reiterate my own thoughts on those few issues, including discussing about the duration of the contract. And yes, I do have a different take on that. Going back to no evergreen contracts, we do want to retain the ability to rethink whether or not it's working out for the district, especially in consideration of the thresholds. You want to be able to look at the threshold to see is the agreement working at the amount of money. It doesn't need to be raised, doesn't need to be lowered. Are we getting the local hires? Are we getting the number of local hires in the marginalized groups that we are trying to target? And that kind of look back needs to happen, not 5 years in every year. And that 3 year plus 2 1 year options is standard in procurement. It's standard in any industry where you are giving, or you are using public money. So that's one reason why we were looking at that policy and that policy change in the first place. The issue about local hire, I know we briefly touched on it Monday, and I just want to reiterate it in front of the full board about making sure that local hire means local hire. Not just people who are coming into town, but people who are actually local to West County, our service area, and including those who own small businesses and who are not necessarily in the merit union shop, but who own small businesses in the local area and who are offered those opportunities to work on these contracts. Because if they're currently being offered the opportunity to work on these contracts, we are not trying to put them out of business. Our local small businesses also need to make sure that they are going to continue to benefit from our organization. And so when we entertained this possibility a couple of different times, including when Director McNeil first brought them into the meeting almost 2 years ago now. This conversation took place, and the Building and Trade said that this was something that would be included in this agreement. So I'm looking forward to seeing that included in this agreement. That the marginalized businesses, the small businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, people with disabilities, all of those businesses would have that carved out in this agreement, and that they would be given the opportunity to participate. I do want to see stronger language, and this is from me, not necessarily speaking for the board, but from myself, stronger language on the use of the local hire, not endeavor to try, but stronger language, which is another reason why we need to do the look back after, to see how did that work out? What was the percentage that was actually employed locally? And did it work out for both sides, for both parties? Were they granted enough contracts? Is it working out for the trades, for the Building and Trades Union as much as they thought? What does the termination clauses look like from both sides? Termination for convenience or for whatever reason? What does the walkaway clauses look like? So I think that that's more my interest in this particular area. That's all I have to say. Does any more directors have anything else to say? Okay. Ms. Brenda, do we have any public comment on this? I know we had the one earlier. You're on mute, Ms. Brenda.
Madam Vice President, we have no further public comment besides the comment that I read out earlier.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Madam Vice President,
Yes, sir.
may I ask Brenda a question? If I can get those comments emailed.
Yeah,
I know there were 2.5 pages, so we weren't able to read them all, so I would like to read them. If you wouldn't mind sharing it, please.
yeah, that would be great. If you could share them with all of us, that would be, so we can all read it for our own understanding. That would be, thank you, Director Zapela. That's a great idea. Thank you so much.
I will do that.
And
Thank you.
if I may, Madam Vice President, I just wanted to point out again that our specialist in these contacts, Jerry K. Phillips, is on the line if you or any of the other directors had any legal questions relating to that. And I would just like to relay to the board that following the planning committee, Ms. K. Phillips did contact the Trades Council and did specifically discuss the items raised in the planning committee. So I just wanted to confirm that back to the board.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. K. Phillips, would you like to speak and give us an update yourself?
Sure. Following
We
the
would appreciate it. Thank
no
you.
problem at all. Following the conversation that we had with the planning committee on Monday evening, I actually updated some of the terms and conditions in the project labor agreement. First, to specifically address the issue of minority-owned, veteran-owned, disability uh, businesses being included in the PLA. So I specifically addressed that issue, also addressed the issue of reporting out to the board on an annual basis and incorporated that into the proposal. So I didn't want to just put it in there and then hit send. And so I was able to talk with Union Council today, as a matter of fact, shortly before our meeting, and we had a very productive conversation about it. Part of what we now are trying to work through is just making sure which part is the Building and Trades Council responsible for, which side of it will the contractor be responsible for. And, you know, we are going to work through those finer details, but we put it in the agreement, had a conversation about it today, and are hopeful in reaching an agreement on those issues soon.
That's beautiful. That's a good update. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Ms. Collins. That was great timing, great update. Fellow directors, any more questions or any questions for Ms. Kay Phillips? None? Okay, seeing none, we can move to the next item. Ms. Brenda?
Thank you. Next item is matters from staff, general manager, general counsel comments and communications.
We don't have any comments. Staff doesn't have any comments. I don't know if general counsel has any general question or general comments, but I know that she'll be doing a brief training following this item. So
I don't have any other comments other than a very brief training, as the general manager mentioned.
All right, well, our general counsel,
All right.
you have the floor.
Okay. So happy December to all of you. And what I was hoping to speak with you briefly about today is the magic of Form 700. Which is something that as elected officials, and indeed many of the senior staff and I myself, we are all required to file with the Fair Political Practices Commission or with our local, with our clerk in our case, something called a Statement of Economic Interests, the Form 700. This is an annual filing. Unless you are newly appointed or elected, in which case you have to do it within 30 days of assuming your new office. And if you're going out of office, you have to do it within 30 days of leaving office. But nevertheless, the Statement of Economic Interest, the Form 700, is something that was required as a result of the Political Reform Act. And for those of you who love history, you should know that the Political Reform Act was actually enacted in California after the Watergate scandal, and it was intended to be a sunshine law. We talked about this a little bit last time, in order to disclose what could potentially be financial conflicts of interest. So the reason why I'm bringing this up now is that while your Form 700 is not due until April 1st, typically a lot of folks are getting their financial affairs in order at the end of the calendar year, because you're going to have to file taxes. You might be looking at all of your deductions for the year, and also because calendar year reporting is what we do on Form 700. So I wanted to just remind all of the directors, and for those of you senior staff who are reporters and on the line, this will help you as well, that the Form 700 is the place where you basically write down all of your economic interests in your life or your spouse's life. And these have to be reported. They are public, and this is part of the diminished privacy rights that you have as a public official. So I just very quickly wanted to give you guys some quick pointers. And if you are going through, let's say, your tax deductions for the year or your budgets for the year, this is a great time for you to start assembling that information so you're not in a rush in March. So real quickly, if I may share my screen, Madam Vice President, I just wanted to show you guys a couple of things that you could use in order to prep for that. Will that be all right with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to pull up for you the FPPC's website. And on it, you can just search for Form 700 quite simply. And this is where what you will find. The Fair Political Practices Commission has all of these. This is called the Statement of Economic Interest, Form 700. And here you will find a link to the Form 700 itself and the reference pamphlet that will answer questions. So what I wanted to do is quickly explain why you might want to be looking at this right now. This is the form, which you have all seen before because every one of you have filed this. The members of the board of directors, there's two types of people who file these forms, okay? So we have something called 87-200 filers, and that includes everyone who's on the board because you are involved in what are called investment decisions. You guys approve the investment policy today, and you also determine through that investment policy where the money is going to go that we invest our surplus funds in. Everyone else who's a Form 700 filer is what we call a code filer. And that means that they are filing pursuant to our conflict of interest code, which will come before you, I believe, at the next meeting or the meeting after that. The conflict of interest code is each individual public agency's code that defines who are the folks who actually have decision-making capacity over the funds of the district. And anyone who has decision-making authority over funds of the district, we want to make sure does not have a conflict of interest in making decisions about purchasing things or entering into contracts, because that would violate the Political Reform Act and our own ethics codes. So the place where most people forget or are unable to complete their Form 700 in a timely manner is in the section that's called gifts. And that's what I wanted to real briefly talk to you about because this is the best time of the year to start looking at it. So very quickly, as we walk through your Form 700, the great part is as you walk through it, there are going to be instructions as you go along. But what I want to point out to you is this section, D, common reportable interests and common non-reportable interests. So common are gifts that you might receive from businesses, vendors, or other contractors. And these could include things like meals or tickets or, and this is also why we're doing it in December, Christmas gifts. It's very often, even if you don't celebrate Christmas, depending on what your celebration is in December, if you have one at all, other folks oftentimes like to send out boxes of See's candies or a book, or they want to offer to take you to dinner. Obviously, that's not happening during COVID, but I have been the recipient of some lovely, what is it called? Harry and David pears last year. That was a lovely gift. I get a book every year from a lawyer who I work with a lot. All of those things that you receive are potentially reportable, as are the things that you may receive throughout the year. And one of the hard parts is if you spend a lot of time with folks who could be vendors or could be other businesses, it can be difficult to collect all of that information. So what I'm doing is I'm scrolling right now through the other things. There is a whole page on where do you get your primary form of employment income. Then there are schedules that have to do with your investments. So if you have investments in stocks or bonds or individual businesses, these all need to be disclosed. And if you have any questions on why, I'm happy to answer them now or individually with any of you, because this is a really important part of our sunshine laws. Schedule B, real quickly, is interest in real property. I want to point out to you all that these are interests in real property that are within the district or within 2 miles of the border of the district. And they don't include your home if you own your home, but they do include things like business properties or investment properties. As we scroll through, we'll also see this one. This is income loans and business positions. If you have another employer, you would list that here. And if you were invested in another company or if you received loans from another company, that would also be here. This does not include your home loan or generally commercial loans. This is the one that I really want to talk about. So this is Schedule D, income gifts. This is where you write, you know, ABC company, and you describe the Harry and David pears that you got. The good news about this is one only needs to disclose if the value of all gifts received from the source is over $50 in a year. So when I received the Harry and David box of pears, I literally went on the Harry and David website and I went, oh golly, how much was that box of pears? And it was $45. So I didn't have to report it. However, if they'd sent me 2 boxes of pears in the same year, you know, one for midsummer and one for December, then I would have had to report it, and I would have had in both places ABC Company, or up here I had ABC Company, and here I would say box of pears, $45, $45. That's how it works. If it exceeds $50, you've got to put it in here. If it doesn't, you don't. But it's more than $50 per entity per year. So just keep that in mind. And you're going to want to document those. There are instructions here, and if you're wondering if a gift applies or it doesn't, a lot of the questions will be answered in the instructions, and if they're not, feel free to call me. We give advice on these types of things all the time. One other thing I want to tell you, if you do receive a lot of gifts, one fun thing that you can do, fun's probably the wrong word, is there's actually an app that's called the Gift Tracker. And the FPPC created it. You can download it on your iPhone. And what's great about the FPPC Gift Tracker is you just, every time you get a gift, you open up the app on your phone, you enter in all the relative details. And at the end of the year, you've got an entire set of data that you can just then upload into your Form 700. When I found out about that, it made my life a lot easier. So that is all that I have for today, unless you have questions. I just, again, wanted to raise the issue with all of you, identify where you can find these schedules if for some reason you want to get ahead of the curve and start completing these to make it easier for you in March. And if you have any questions with respect to gifts, income, investments, honoraria, any other things that you receive, please let me know, and I'm happy to help you complete that. If you haven't done an AB 1234 training recently, we're also happy to provide some training on that. And with that, I will conclude my training.
Thank you so much. Any questions from directors? Let's start with Director Stanley.
No, thank you for that.
Thank you. Director Zabela.
No questions, but thank you, Claire. I might be reaching out to you after I look at it again. Thank you.
Director Weiner.
No, a very simple economic life right now.
And thank you, Ms. Claire. My only question is, why can't we, well, I guess that, you did answer it, why I can't fill out just one Form 700 for both?
You can.
Because there's two different positions. It's two different positions.
There may be two positions, but you can actually, you could basically have all the same schedules and then just fill out a new front page. I can help you with that. If it depends, although, if you have an electronic filing or not, or you're doing paper filing with your two positions.
Yeah, they may be doing it, because they send it to the board secretary at work. She sends it to us electronically.
Yeah, unfortunately, if they're not using the same electronic vendor, there are 3 vendors for Form 700s across the state, and if you're not using the same vendor between your different entities, then you unfortunately have to fill it out multiple times.
Okay. So I'll call you, because I do have some other questions.
Sure thing.
Okay. That was it. Does any staff have questions for her? Good presentation, though. Thank you. Vital subject. But the AB 1234 training will be good too. We've had a lot of it, but I think you never get enough of that one.
You'll be happy to hear that the gift limit, so let me just mention one last thing. So you have to report anything over $50 per year from the same source. You may not accept previously, up until this year, over $500 per year from any one source. You just have to report it up to $500, but after $500, you can't take anything more. You got to give it back. The FPPC, I believe 3 weeks ago, increased that amount to the whopping amount, I believe, of $520 a year. So congratulations, you got an extra $20 before you have to give it back. So I'll update all of you on that this year in Q1 before you actually have to do your filings. But I would, again, encourage you, if you do go through a financial review of your calendar year, this is the time to try to identify all those things you may have gotten. So.
Yeah,
That's all.
I think last year one dinner was $75. We went to Casa
Hmm.
or CSA, one of them. It was $75. Just
Yeah, I mean, if I
so
may, that's, last year, the last reporting year, I went to CASA or Aqua Conference, and I think Carollo Engineering hosted a dinner.
yeah,
And afterwards, I dutifully wrote them and said, hey, how much was the dinner? And they let us know, and then we put that down. Um, you can always over-report, right? If it was only $49, you could always put it down if you want to, just to remind yourself. But don't forget that. It is important that those things get disclosed, and they get disclosed completely over the $50 threshold.
yeah. I just have a rule not to accept anything.
That's a really great bright line policy. There are a number of agencies that I've worked with that had a zero gifts policy, so you couldn't even, accept a Starbucks coffee or, a breath mint pretty much. And so we have to make decisions as agencies, kind of where's the right line. I think it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to give you a contract as a result of you giving me a breath mint. But again, everyone has different thresholds for this, and there are some agencies, County of Orange is one that has a strict zero gifts policy. So it's really, it really varies across the state, and I don't want to be, I don't really mean to joke about that. It is a serious matter, but again, to my knowledge, since I've joined you, we do not have a no gifts policy, and so you're still at the normal state levels.
We have a good place here. Okay, thank you so much for that. Ms. Brenda.
Thank you. Next agenda item is 8A. That's matters for members of the board meeting reports.
Fellow directors, it is time to tell us what you've been up to. Director Zepeda, what have you been up to? What would you like to report?
I attended the League of Cities training or update on new bills that have passed. And I've made some notes, and I'll be forwarding this over to the GM. I think one or two might pertain to us. They focus a lot on cities, but there were there was one at least that might pertain to us. And I was trying to look for my notes earlier, but I put them in a different laptop. But I'll send those over. But that was actually, overall, it was a good training or a good update. So I'll send that over to Lisa just to be aware of these new bills. And I don't know if Claire has any updates on any bills pertaining to us that we should be aware of. And you don't have to have it today, Claire. But in the future, it will be good to just know if anything that we should know about. But that's about it. Well, I attended other stuff as well, but that's the only one that's got anything reportable.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And Director Wiener, how about you? What have you been up to?
November's pretty much been a blur for me. I haven't attended any meetings that there were anything reportable. But I think there was an election.
You think?
Yeah.
You think? Thank you, sir. Director Stanley, how about you? What have you been up to that you would like to report?
Well, I was at the North Richmond MAC, and they had kind of like an informal chatting going on after their meeting that I hung around for. And I'm just bringing this up for staff and global warming people. The talk was about all the homelessness going on and people using the creeks that border us as restrooms and dumping area. And so as this levee project continues, that there are people who are able to investigate and levy fines and make sure that our creeks are kept from being a dumping ground of all kinds of things. And so as very complicated as how, the creeks border are us on what sides are they? North and east of us. and would be dumping into our waterways. So as the discussions on a levy gets more minute, this might be something to bring in other outside entities to coordinate as a greater public effort. Not necessarily the wastewater district, but just a coordinated effort of supporting our local communities and our environment. And it doesn't make sense for us to do one little part over here and then have pollution happening right next door or part of something. So I'm just mentioning this for people to keep in the back of their minds as discussions continue, that at some point issues like this might be relevant to part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stanley. And I just will give you just a really brief update. I met with the Climate Reality Project for Contra Costa, and we also have Climate 350 Contra Costa to talk about what we will put forth for the new legislative session for next month, and what we would like for the governor to do with this $26 billion windfall, and when it comes to climate and infrastructure. And we also had a meeting, our monthly meeting with Senator. Last week was Senator Harris, and this month was Senator, well, not this month, but November, was Senator Feinstein. So we had our monthly meeting with her and her staff to talk about what's going on in Washington. And the chief conversation with her, of course, is on the environment, environmental justice, and also the infrastructure bill, and trying to avoid a continuing resolution with this budget. They seem to think that they will get a budget passed in time to avoid a CR. And my biggest question is what are they going to do for the infrastructure bill, which of course has big implications for us, the water and wastewater industry, and how much money we will get put into our industry for building up our infrastructures for our buildings, and the state will get more money for that. So we were just waiting for a word from DC on what that will look like. So they have to pass a bill by next Thursday in order for the government not to shut down the following week. So we have another call tomorrow morning to see how that goes. And this one's with Senator Harris's staff as the last one before she becomes vice president. So these are December calls. So I will be doing that one. And if anybody's interested in being a part of Climate Reality, which is former Vice President Al Gore, his project, let me know. We meet for the Contra Costa, and then we also have a California branch. But it really is talking about how we can get to, Director Winner, you will appreciate it, zero waste. And then we have Climate 350 for Contra Costa. But we work on the one water concept, dealing with water and wastewater. That's it for me. With Brenda.
The next item is B, 8B, good of the order.
Fellow directors, what say you? Director Zepeda?
Nothing from me right now.
Thank you, sir. Director Stanley?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Director Weiner.
I have nothing.
Thank you, sir. And I have nada. Ms. Brenda.
Next item, 8C, future agenda items.
Let's start with Director Weiner. Do you have any you would like to add?
No, I have no future agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And Director Stanley, do you have any future agenda items?
No, thank you.
Thank you, madam. And Director Zepeda, do you have any future agenda items?
1.5. So the half is the PLA, just to make sure that it is coming before us on the 16th for a vote up or down on either proposals that gets presented to us. So that's the half. The other, and I don't know if it's a future agenda, it might be a report or just an FYI. As many of you may know, I do benefits. I'm in the insurance world. And a lot of the talks right now all over the world is what are agencies and businesses going to do in regards to the COVID-19 vaccine? Are they going to mandate employees to have it before they enter the workplace? Are they going to have any restrictions, et cetera, et cetera? I know it's early, but if that vaccine gets rolled out later this month, as some individuals say they will be rolling it out, they don't know who's going to get it yet, who's going to go first, who's going to go second. But I think our agency should at least start looking into what process and protocols we might want to adopt in regards to our employees, what legal issues we might want to look at, because there's some guidance out there that they might be able to have employers ask the employees for a COVID-19 vaccine before they enter the workplace. So there's some talks out there. So just want our agencies just to be in front of it as an employer to make sure that we know what we're going to be doing. So that is it. I don't know, again, it could be a report or of any findings for future. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Zepeda. So Ms. Claire, so let me see, let me take one of these at a time. So the first one, the half of one, the PLA. So we can we confirm with staff that this one is actually on the agenda for the 16th?
Yeah, so
We'll be there.
Okay.
yes, it is coming on the 16th.
Okay, well then that one's easy. And then, so Ms. Claire, would this just be an informational topic report? This topic of COVID update?
Yeah, so I'll actually take that since the agendas are general
Okay,
manager.
thank you, Ms. Lisa.
Yep. So
Thank you, Lisa.
I mean, we'll report back. You know, we're connected with what's going on. We're paying attention on a regular basis regarding COVID. So we can share with you any information that we have about that. I'm not sure if it'll be as quickly as maybe the board would want, because I think there are going to be some definite labor issues related to that. But we can certainly bring back an update. We do a monthly, or we have been doing a regular COVID update to the board, so we can include that information in one of those reports for you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Director Zepeda, does that answer your question?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you, Lisa.
Director Weiner, you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Right. And I'm fine because Miss Claire answered my question with her future training prompt already. That was going to be mine on the more training. So I am good. So thank you, everybody. Ms. Brenda.
Okay,
I
our
think we get to
last
say-
favorite item, item 9.
I think you get to say our favorite thing. Go ahead. Say it. Say it with a smile.
Adjournment, item 9.
It sounds so sweet. Such a nice thing. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. I believe you
All right.
can see
Thank you.
7:45, you get to eat your lovely dinner before it's too late.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Buenas noches.